What is the best introduction to philosophy for someone who is just starting out? I get this question all the time, and it's a good question, but philosophy is this huge field. For almost any topic that you can think of, there is a philosophy of whatever that topic is. So there's philosophy of science, philosophy of psychology, business ethics, engineering ethics, philosophy of religion, and even for just one branch within philosophy, called Metaphysics. The book I'm about to recommend says the subject matter of metaphysics is absolutely everything. Everything. And that's just for one branch. So when someone is asking about the best intro to philosophy, they're asking where they can find one book that covers all the basics of philosophy. And that's really hard to do. And until recently, I didn't think there was this single resource that could capture what you would need for a basic understanding of the field as a whole. But after doing a lot of research, I think I found it. My highest book recommendation for someone who wants to get a sense of this big field of philosophy is the Norton Introduction to Philosophy. And I should mention, I am not sponsored, and I get nothing whatsoever from the publisher or the editors for this recommendation. They have no idea I'm doing this video. So, why is this book my go-to for an introduction to philosophy? Even the beginner's level literature in philosophy can be difficult to understand for those who have no background in studying philosophy. So, how does the book attempt to solve this problem? Well, first, it is so comprehensive in what it includes from this big field of philosophy. The book is over 1,000 pages, and it covers almost every major branch of philosophy: philosophy of religion, epistemology, metaphysics, philosophy of mind, ethics, and political philosophy. One of my few complaints is that it does not cover philosophy of language, which I believe is a foundational methodological key to studying philosophy. But philosophy of language is difficult for beginning students, so I do understand the choice there. And aside from that absence, for each major philosophical branch, the book covers several topics within each branch. So, for example, under metaphysics and philosophy of mind, you'll read many philosophers across the centuries who address questions like, is the mind material? What is consciousness? What's the relation between appearance and reality? What exists? And so, under each topic, you get a broad selection from key philosophers and famous works on that topic. So, for example, in the section on epistemology, theories of knowledge, under the question, what is knowledge, you'll read from Plato in the ancient world, and you'll also read 20th century and 21st century philosophers like Edmund Gettier and Timothy Williamson. And then under the question, how can you know your own mind or the mind of another person, you'll read people like Bertrand Russell, Saul Kripke, D.M. Armstrong, Alex Byrne, and others. And if some of those names aren't familiar to you, that's okay, because the second reason I love this book is that the 5 editors are among the most competent established philosophers who are working today. Before knowing that this book even existed, I was already familiar with the work of Gideon Rosen in metaphysics, Alex Byrne in epistemology, and Elizabeth Harman in ethics, for example. So there's a total of 5 editors who've worked on the book from Princeton, from MIT, Berkeley, and UCLA. And these editors have a comprehensive grasp of their field, and they know how to choose some of the best work under each branch and topic in philosophy. Now, if you're expecting a broad historical survey of the past 2,000 years or so for each branch in philosophy, you're not going to get that. That would be appropriate for a book on just the history of philosophy. This introduction is not an introduction to the history of philosophy. It's an introduction to the major topics and questions you'll find in philosophy. And that's a good thing. That means you'll be reading many contemporary, up-to-date works in each field. Now, let me say a couple things about that. When we look at the field of philosophy as a whole, most philosophical literature, at least in the Western world today, falls under a kind of philosophy called analytic philosophy. Analytic philosophy started around beginning of the 20th century, so a little before that, and its approach focuses on applying tools of logic to maximize clarity and precision. It's a methodology that informs how you think philosophy should be done. It informs how you understand the history of philosophy and much more about the field as a whole. But there are other approaches to philosophy, like what we call continental philosophy, which also has a rich tradition going back even further than analytic philosophy. And it's called continental philosophy because it emerged on the continent of Europe, mostly in Germany, France, Denmark. And continental philosophy has more of a historical and literary emphasis, focusing less on the tools of formal logic. So you should know that the Norton Introduction to Philosophy is an introductory work that takes an analytic approach to philosophy. And in my view, that's a good thing because it represents the vast majority of the field of philosophy. Okay, with that said, the third reason I love the book is the supplemental material, the test questions, discussion, and the commentary at the end of each reading selection. For example, at the end of the selection on Pascal's wager, they have 4 questions under the test your understanding section, like Pascal insists that you must bet. And why does he say this? And then under the notes and questions section, at the end of the same selection, the editors offer what they call a crash course in decision theory. So they take a historical text and apply tools from contemporary philosophy, like decision theory, to help you understand the main issues even better. And the answers to the questions are found at the end of the book. So you're not left on your own to guess at how these philosophers would answer their own question. And you also don't get just one view when it comes to controversial topics and topics where many philosophers differ. Instead, like any good introduction, you get some viewpoint diversity. The reading selections give you a sense of the main commitments, the arguments, and the trade-offs within each topic, which is what I think any good introduction to philosophy should do. In my view, a good introduction to philosophy book should not first try and persuade the reader toward a single position under a topic when there are several positions argued for in the literature on that topic. A good introduction, in my mind, to philosophy exposes the reader to the main arguments on both sides, and it allows the reader to evaluate opposing positions and arguments organically, using all the relevant information available. The book also has a 33-page glossary of philosophical terms that are defined and explained for you. So it's like getting a dictionary of philosophy starter kit included with the book. Now, as far as the price, the physical book I think is reasonably priced and not as pricey as you might expect for what you get. I checked Amazon today and it's about $55. And in my view, considering how much material you're getting in just one book, to me, that seems like a fair price. And I would put the reading level squarely at the college level. And even some college students will find some of the selections in the book pretty challenging. You've probably noticed that even some of the basics of philosophy are intrinsically challenging to people before a certain age or experience level because of philosophy's often abstract and conceptual subject matter. So don't expect this book to be completely accessible for the average high school student. For high school age, expect it to be a reach for most students. And if you are a high school student or a college student or even someone who has never read any philosophy, I recommend first taking a look at the book on Amazon and clicking the read a sample link below the image there on the left. You'll see it. And I'll put a link to the book in the description below. Amazon includes a really long sample of the book, so you can look through many of the beginning sections and see if the reading level is actually right for you. Now, no introductory book on philosophy can cover everything in just one place, even at an introductory level. But this is the best resource I've seen that acts as a start for just about anyone wanting to explore what philosophy is about. And if you do check it out or have your own take on the book, drop a comment and let me know what you think.